So I like the Revised Common Lectionary. That's the whole system that tells us what scriptures we're supposed to read each Sunday, the RCL, Revised Common Lectionary. I really do. I like it a lot. I like how they decided, for some reason or another, on the 8th Sunday after Pentecost, that the theme should be dancing. We have two very different stories of dancing in one place, but they have a lot in common, too. In the one case, in our first reading, we have a king dancing and a princess watching. And in the other case, you have a princess dancing and the king watching, right? And in the first, the princess watches and is offended. And in the second, the king watches the princess and is delighted, maybe a little bit too delighted. And so we have two very different kinds of dancing here, obviously, as well. We have David, it says, dancing mightily before the Lord. David is dancing in worship. And in the second, we have Herodias, or the daughter of Herodias, depending on what version you're reading, is dancing for entertainment, to entertain the king on his birthday. So we have two very different things going on, but with these overlaps. So another thing that they have in common, too, is the attire. In both cases, whoever it is doing the dancing is wearing fewer clothes than they're supposed to, as far as other people are concerned. And so there is some offense, as you might be aware, when you don't dress appropriately, even if you're just underdressed, right? That can cause offense. But if you're really, truly underdressed and you don't have enough clothes on, that can cause some serious offense. And that's what we see happening here. We see that Michal, it says, she despises David in her heart. So I like how the lectionary created this parallel between two seemingly very different passages. What I don't like is that it cuts off the David story before you really get to understand this offense. We get to the point where it says, Michal, the daughter of Saul, she was a princess, she was the daughter of the king, and also queen. She married the new king. And she's offended, but we don't know why. It just says she despised him in her heart. And we're like, okay. I mean, was she just jealous of his dance moves? Maybe she was having a bad day and she just didn't like seeing her spouse having a good day on the same day she's having a bad day. Maybe you know that feeling. I don't know. Or maybe it bothers her that God chose David in place of her father's lineage for the monarchy, to be king of Israel in the future. And she was the princess, and of course she's loyal to her father in a lot of ways, but one might think, well, she got a promotion, right? She went from princess to queen, and also the potential to be the mother of future kings. So that should be good. Maybe, should she really feel that way or not? I don't know. But if we stop reading at verse 19, which is where that passage ends, we never know. We just have to guess. And maybe this is a cynical side of me, but I feel like the designers of the lectionary stopped at verse 19 on purpose. And maybe you'll see why. Maybe you'll agree with me if we read on, because there's 3 more verses after that I think really clarify some things. And I'm going to read those. Starting in verse 20, it says, David returned to bless his household. But Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet David and said, how the king of Israel honored himself today. And she's being sarcastic. She means dishonored. Because she says, uncovering himself today before the eyes of his servants' maids, as any vulgar fellow might shamelessly uncover himself. I think you can read pervert in that word, vulgar fellow. I think that's what she's really trying to say. David said to Michal, it was before the Lord who chose me in place of your father and all his household to appoint me as prince over Israel, the people of the Lord. I will dance before the Lord. I will make myself even more foolish than this. And I will be humbled in my own eyes. But the maids of whom you have spoken, by them I shall be held in honor. So I guess that last guess that we had of why she despised him in her heart is not so far off. This might be the underlying cause of her upset, of her offense, is that, well, she is the queen, and yes, David is her husband, but that there's still that something gnawing at her, that her own father was betrayed. So I could see that as this underlying cause, but what is it that's bubbling up to the surface here? What's bubbling up is that she grew up in the palace. She understands how a king, how royalty is supposed to behave, right? She saw the way her father Saul conducted himself in the palace and amongst the people. She knows how a king is supposed to act, and when she watches David, she is thinking, this ain't it. Kings do not act like that. Kings, and we can have all kinds of debates over just how little David was wearing. Was he completely naked? Was he wearing something like underwear? Maybe he might have been dressed from shoulder to knee, and that still might have been considered scandalous, Whatever it was scandalous. And she said, this is wrong. You are disgracing the throne. You are disgracing the palace, the entire monarchy. This is not appropriate. What are you doing? And I should know. Michal was missing the entire forest for the sake of one tree. I'm going to call that tree decorum. And I think we in the Episcopal Church may be at a special risk of this same thing. Sometimes we miss the entire forest for the sake of one tree. Michal missed the fact God was doing a mighty work in Israel, had brought the ark back. It was God's own presence returning to the midst of Israel, suggesting favor, suggesting a future of prosperity and hope. Michal missed that. David was a true leader with integrity who was not concerned so much about his image as about setting an example for the people. Michal missed that. David had this relationship with God based in love and joy, and he was authentically worshiping God, expressing this excitement, this jubilation about God being in him and being amongst his people and authentically worshiping. Michal missed that. What are we missing? What forest are we missing for that one tree called decorum? And I think we have a special problem with that in the Episcopal Church because we have invested so much in our decorum. We have these beautiful spaces. We have sacristies full of fine linens and wine and silver. And we have instruments and beautiful music. And we have all these books with beautiful words that are all arranged just so. To the point that one might think that you arrive and you come through this door and you realize what we have and what God has done for us, and you're jumping up and down in the parking lot and you can't wait to get in because of everything that we have in here, and you walk through the door and you jump up and down and you say, "This is amazing. Look what God has done for us." But no. It's not what I observe in you or in me. I observe that we come through those doors in a dignified manner. We sit in our seats. We pretend to pray, maybe, while looking around and silently judging anyone that seems like a threat to our standards. Present company excluded, of course. Maybe that's not you. Maybe you really are overwhelmed with the love of God. And what Jesus has done for you in your life, in your faith from day to day, fills you up and makes you want to dance. And maybe the only reason you aren't dancing through that door and dancing down the aisle is because someone in your past trained you not to. That's me. That was the craziest I've been in a year and a half since I got here. And you're all uncomfortable, and so am I. I think the lectionary designers stopped at verse 19 on purpose. It makes them uncomfortable, just like it makes you uncomfortable, and it makes me uncomfortable. To think that our faith would somehow run contrary to our dignity, that it would run contrary to our decorum and our standards of dress or of aesthetics or even rubrics. Someone in my past trained me not to dance. And I almost completely learned that lesson, as you can see. Are we inauthentic? What is God trying to do in us? Look at Jesus. We didn't even get a mention, hardly, very little, of Jesus in that gospel. But look at the parallel there. Who were the people that were offended at Jesus? We can parallel that to the David story, because the last verse that I just read from the missing part of that story of David is he said, "The maids that you mention hold me in honor." The princess assumes that everyone is offended just like she is, including the maids. And David says, no. The maids get it. The workers get it. The people on this bottom rung of whatever hierarchy you've constructed in your systems, they understand because they are the ones being blessed and feeling blessed. They are the ones who are being elevated, who are being seen for the first time. And this is true in Jesus' ministry as well, and it's not hard to see. Who is it that flocks to Jesus? Who is it that worships Jesus? The ones who have been healed, the ones who have been provided for, the ones who were repressed and oppressed all their lives until this Jesus shows up and sees them. These are like David's maids. But who are the ones that are offended at Jesus? Who are the ones that look at Jesus and despise him in their hearts? It's the princesses. It's the princes of the palace, of the temple, of the synagogues. It's the establishment. It's the people with power. The people with something to lose cannot deal with the real Jesus. So which one am I? Which one are we? When we stop and think about what God has done in us and for us and through us, how would you respond if a person did those things for you? How would you thank them? How would you boast about them in public? How would you talk about them to your friends? Maybe a little different than we do here when we come in and gather together to think about what God is doing in us and for us and through us. Are we prepared to become more foolish than this? Whose standard are we obeying? Is it the standards we've been given in a book and said this is what it means to be Episcopalian? Or even this is what it means to be a Christian? Or are we human beings in relationship with something outstanding? With someone who does immeasurably above all that we can ask or think? Which one is it? Amen.